And I know that when I was at Boys and Girls Clubs and recruiting volunteers, one of the areas I never tapped into was the staff. And it wasn't until I got here and someone was talking about how many staff there were, I was like, oh, I was really missing a huge population on campus when I was always trying to target students. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But to start, we're going to talk about kind of the core ways that students engage in service on campus. And that is through Cardinal Service, which was launched about 6 years ago. And it's a bold university-wide initiative that elevates service on campus and really gets to the root of what Stanford was started on, the principles that Jane Stanford really wanted students to engage for the public good. And so what we launched along with the university, this is again a university-wide initiative that the Haas Center is really kind of the hub of or heart of this work. We help kind of navigate it. We help build the programming. And there are 4 elements. So where I really like to get us started is with Cardinal courses, which is what Jorge and I operate. And Cardinal courses are 10-week long programs, courses that tie in community-based work into the course content. So this might be a communications class on data analysis that works with Dreamcatchers, a local nonprofit, and analyzes the data for their organization. Or it might be a class on soils and they go and analyze the soil for a local organization that supports learning disabled adults and helps them kind of understand the soil and what would be best to plant in their gardens that they're developing. Or it might be a course on teaching and you're going and actually in the classroom and partnered with a school and bringing back that learning. The key is this connection between the placement, the course content and reflection, and that's where the learning really happens. So those are short projects, usually 6 to 8 weeks, either a project or a direct service engagement. And so you can work with faculty that you might be interested with, or with one of our directors of community engaged learning to get into that. And I'll introduce those people in just a bit. Next piece, I think that Cardinal courses are a great introduction to organizations. They are a snapshot. It is a very small amount of work that people get to do during that time. But students can go deeper by either engaging in Cardinal quarters or Cardinal commitments. And these are ways of getting students who are engaged in a much deeper way. So Cardinal quarters are typically summer-long fellowships. There are a few students who take a break during the academic year to do these. They're full-time commitments for 8 to 10 weeks for 40 hours a week. And those are recruited in the early winter quarter. So students apply for those the first week of February. So if you're interested in that, we'll talk about kind of how to pull in and get noticed for those. Cardinal commitment is a great way to extend either of these opportunities or to just get started. Students are committing to an organization for 3 or more quarters. And to me, this is where I really was excited because this was my biggest challenge at Boys and Girls Clubs. I had the hardest time keeping students engaged quarter to quarter. And this is really us trying to incentivize people and students to stay engaged. There's not much of a carrot, but it's a language that we can have with them and a way of talking about, hey, the value is really not just committing to a quarter, but it's really committing to a longer term with those partners. And some students, it might be that they come back every winter and you just know you can rely on them every winter to run a program. But most of the time it's 3 consecutive quarters. And finally, we really want to try and help launch students into their careers. So thinking about Cardinal careers, and this is where we have some of the postgraduate fellowships and opportunities, as well as just ways of helping students. You know, we have supervisors and kind of counselors-ish who help advisors, that'd be the right word, advisors who help advise our students in how to engage post-graduation, whether it's working for a local nonprofit, working in another country, or working locally, potentially even with a corporation, but on more social responsibility issues. So just some keys to navigating Stanford. So read the Cardinal Service newsletter. This is the newsletter that Christy sends out quarterly. Okay. I know there's been some juggling between how often it should go out. This is a great way to just understand some of the things that are going on campus, understand what some key deadlines are that are coming up in terms of recruiting students, as well as often she's sharing some really fun events, lectures, that sort of stuff. Find your connectors. When I was at Boys and Girls Club, I had 17 different people that I connected with. I'm hoping you don't have to deal with that many. It was a little overwhelming and hard to navigate. But find those core people. I always recommend having two, because you never know when somebody is gonna, move on to something new, or might be out for a while. I was out on maternity leave for a while. There are all sorts of different things that come up in our lives that make us shift unexpectedly, or even expectedly. But having two people on campus that you really feel like you can go to for figuring out how to navigate is really helpful. And then recruit. To recruit, we really think about first inviting people back. So you have students in for a Cardinal course, make sure you invite them and give them ways to engage in their next steps. Consider both staff and students. Create a great blurb. We'll go into that briefly shortly, and then post on our listservs. So we have two core listservs, one for graduate students and one for undergraduates. And then we also have a staff listserv, which you have to have a staff post to, but can be a great way. And then post on our job boards. And we'll send some links out for that after this email so you can easily access them. Some great people who might want to be your connectors, or you might want to be your connectors, are our Cardinal service team. So Kelly Baxorty, who's in charge of Cardinal Commitment, John McConnell with Cardinal Quarter, Leslie Garvin with Cardinal Careers, and Christy with our community partnerships. Each of these people also have other team members who might be helpful for you to connect with. And again, we'll make sure you have links and this resource. Our directors of community engaged learning, we focus on specific content areas, not departments. So for example, I focus on education and I work with courses in communications and language. So we have a lot of connections across campus and can help with that navigation. We also are more experts in a specific field. So if you're focused on environment or health, those are some areas. If you're focused more on social justice, almost all of us can help tap into that, because a lot of our work centers on those issues as well. And those things pop up in different areas across campus. So Christy, if you could send this in a link, I didn't do a hot link for myself today for this one, but one of the most important spots for you to navigate to is our Hawes Center for Public Service website. And then there's a tab that says resources. You can see it here at the top. You can click that, and then community partnerships. And that's where you're going to find the bulk of the information for you in terms of how to navigate on campus. Within community partnerships, you can see there's a large number of other specific resources. So recruiting students, social entrepreneurship and residence program. This is our Sears Fellowship for social entrepreneurs, our Cardinal Commitment for program directors, our Pathways Working Group, and then events, co-sponsorship. So if you ever wanted to kind of co-sponsor an event. So as you're thinking about recruiting students, there are a couple of different ways, as we kind of mentioned in Cardinal Service. There's one-time or short-term events and ongoing opportunities. Those are kind of outlined. There's a link you can post them to. We don't do as much of this. It's a little bit harder, but we do have what we call fresh service liaisons, and they're often looking for these one-time opportunities. Then we have internship and job opportunities, full-time immersive experiences, and then community service work study. And community service work study is where you pay 10% of a student's salary and the rest of it gets paid through Stanford and the federal government. These are students who typically are middle low income on campus. It's a little bit tricky on campus because some of our most low income students actually get full scholarships on campus. So you're getting that kind of middle group. We can't let you know who they are. So we usually just suggest saying that this is a community service work study opportunity, like it's available to community service work study students. And then we have postgraduate experience, as I had mentioned. So again, people can find you through our listservs, Service for All, Staffers Village, through our Cardinal Commitment opportunities, Cardinal Quarter Connections, which I'll share a link in just a moment, and then through careers. And those links will get sent out to you. So with opportunities, this is what it looks like. We always find it helpful to kind of see, this is how students would search. Thank you, Hope. Sorry, we're rushing to the end, as always. I don't know why we have a blank page there. I apologize. And then this is how, there's a link that you can post. So you'll fill out a Google form to post a Cardinal Quarter opportunity. And these I would recommend posting in the next week or two. So students start looking at this document primarily over winter break. And this is where they might reach out to you to find a summer opportunity. With that said, your best bet on finding a student to work for you for over the summer is to reach out to students who have already engaged with you in some way. You're going to be much more likely to engage, to find somebody that way. But this is what they would find. And so this is how you can think about what they're going to view, which I think is really important. And lastly, for those who could stay on just a couple more minutes, this is some recommendations we have on crafting your blurb. So again, I always like to show you the other side, what students see. It's all about the subject. So this is what students see when they get these digests when we post to our listservs. And the listservs then have just a brief, couple sentences that they can see. And so you want your subject line to be the most important, because then they have to click on that to get to the actual email. And so then having an extra attachment, I always just say include short and sweet in the email itself, in the posting. You don't need the attachments. Sometimes students will go to them. A link is much better, but keeping it just as concise as possible is really valuable. So use verbs. First 3 words matter the most, because sometimes when you're on your phone, you even see less than what's here. And then if it's a paid role, say paid at the beginning. And lastly, here are just some times to consider in your planning. In terms of recruiting for fall, you want to think end of September, early October, kind of the first week or 2 of October, because that's when students have outlined their schedules. December for winter, December and early January. For spring, late March, early April. And then the summer is based on the role, but it's usually actually January is kind of the core time to be recruiting for summer opportunities if you want them paid for through Stanford. So there was a lot to that. And I just want to open it up for any questions. Again, you can always reach out to us as well. I'll put my email in here.